And coffee will never be sustainable. Like, let's be completely honest here, that coffee will never be sustainable because it's a product that's not grown locally, can't be grown locally, always has food miles on it, and then has to go through this fairly aggressive cooking process. But we can try and make it a little bit more. We can do things, we need to do things, and we need to appreciate the value of it. Coffee is too cheap. Coffee should be more expensive. Coffee is a luxury.
Welcome to KaffeSverige and Kaffe med Fredrik. Today we are going to have a chat with Leighton, co-owner of Drop Coffee and Kaffe from Ireland. Thank you for having us.
No, thank you for the opportunity. Very exciting to talk to the Swedish community because I've been here for 6 years and I don't really think I've had that many conversations. So it's lovely to have a platform. Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite strange that you've been here for so long and you haven't had a platform.
I think that's very much on purpose. You've met Joanna, right?
Yeah.
Like the face of Drop. Like, why would you put this face in front of it when that face is in front of it? So I'm very much in the background of Drop. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of the reason. I think it's also a confidence thing. You know, it's like being in a different country and languages. We were just talking off camera before coming on. I think that it's definitely tamed down the old Steve Leighton. He's definitely a little calmer.
Yeah, we were talking about some coffee just before and you served some coffee, so can you please tell us what's in your mug today?
Hello everybody and welcome to In My Mug. It's actually a Nicaraguan. It's a Pacamara from a farm called Limoncillo that I've worked with since 2007. It's owned by the Maresh family. Yeah. I'm a huge fan of them. They are phenomenal people, phenomenal coffee growers, and this is one of their pre-ship samples. Yeah. I explained to you when you came in off camera that we have a saying in England that the shoemaker always has terrible shoes, and I do all the sample roasting here, but I rarely have production coffee, so that's out of the Akawa about an hour and a half ago. Yeah. So
yeah, it was a really nice smell of new roasted coffee when I came.
Yes, no, that's the smell constantly coming out of this office, is that I do all of the samples, and on an average week I will be doing 25-30 samples a week through here, through my work, not just for Drop but also for 3FE.
Yeah. But let's start from the beginning. Who is Stephen Leighton?
I think I've been in meetings like this before. I'm Steve Leighton and I'm a coffeeholic. I'm Steve Leighton. I'm originally from the UK, from a small town called Stafford, and started in coffee in 1999 with a market stall, just selling coffee beans, which graduated into a coffee shop. Not a lot of people know that I was a coffee shop owner before I was a roaster. Hated it. And then became a roastery in 2002, 2003, and kind of went from there. Founder of Has Been, which I'm no longer a part of, but also partner in Drop Coffee, as we explained, in 3FE Coffee in Ireland. People say, like, you know, where do you come from, what did you do? I don't know, it just kind of happened. I just kind of roasted coffee, liked it, had fun, you know, MC World Barista Championships, had podcasts about, you know, Tamper Tantrum and In My Mug, and just did stuff, you know, it just kind of, life happened, and when you try and condense it down into a thing, it's really difficult.
But why do you think that you just fall in love with coffee?
A very vivid memory as a 7-year-old. There was a small coffee shop and just sold coffee beans in a nearby town called Wolverhampton. It was called Snape's, and they roasted coffee in the cellar of this shop. And as a 7-year-old, I just remember the smells and the visuals of smoke coming out of the ground. And my mom, a single parent, was very supportive of my curiosity. So she let me go into the shop, and I bugged this guy, and we bought coffee, and ever since then I've always had an interest in coffee. For my 7th Christmas, my mum bought me a filter coffee maker. That was what I wanted for my Christmas present as a 7-year-old. So started off weird, still weird.
But I actually heard an interview with you some years ago that you told everyone that you started off in the industry with just a small stand at the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, of course. So I come from a small town called Stafford, as I've already said, and it has a marketplace there. Now, my previous life, I was a prison officer. So I spent a lot of my life wanting to be a prison officer, and as soon as I got in that job, I hated it. I was always looking for ways out. I wanted to have a career that I also loved, so it didn't feel like work so much. And I found this coffee roaster in the UK, and I started having conversations with him because I was buying coffee from him. And I was like, would you sell me some coffee wholesale and I'll resell? And he was like, yeah, of course. You know, that's the whole business model. So I had a market stand in Stafford, and it was not very successful. I think, you know, the first week I probably did about £30, so what's that, 350 crowns in a whole week. And the next week I did nothing. There was a Friday morning, I thought, okay, if it doesn't work here, I'm stopped, I'm out. And this little old lady comes up and she's really interested in what I'm doing. She asked me the right question, oh, tell me about what it is. And I'm getting excited because I'm sharing my coffee passion with somebody. And she buys some coffee and I grind it for her, and she goes off with a little trolley. And I'm just packing up for the end of the day, the only sale I've had all day. And I see her coming back and I'm like, this is like 3-4 hours later. And she comes back, she says, there's something wrong with this coffee. And I was like, oh, well, you know, is it too strong? Is it, you know, too weak? What is it? She says, it won't dissolve in the water. And she bought it thinking it was instant coffee. And it just made me realise that the very small town I was in wasn't ready for what I was proposing to bring to them, which was specialty coffee, single origin, you know. And this was 1999. We had no Starbucks there, we had no Costas, there was no chains, there was no coffee shops, there were tea houses, and that was it. So I kind of quickly realised that if I was going to sell coffee, I needed a place to sell coffee, and the coffee shop was the next logical step. So I packed up my market gear and went off to open a coffee shop, which lasted for a few years.
Yeah, and then it was the start of Has Been.
Exactly. So the market store was actually called Has Been, so that was the very first venture of it. Yeah, you know, then the cafe came and then closed the cafe down and focused on the roastery in 2002, 2003, and started the online sales then, and everything else kind of just took off from there.
Yeah, and actually you have sold your part in Has Been?
No, I'm actually still a shareholder within the group. I resigned from my position 2.5 years ago because I had to take the company. I had to take a legal case against the company for the funds that we bought. It didn't sit right being a director of a company that I was going to have to take legal action against. So luckily that legal action's all completed now and done, and yeah, you know, I got my money. But yeah, you know, it's very sad, you know, this, say 1999, and it was 2.5 years ago I resigned, so a good 20 years of my life in those bricks and mortar, but still a shareholder, and yeah, there's no communication anymore, but yeah, you know, we move on, and we see what the future brings with my other opportunities, which is, you know, what brought me to Sweden, and with my relationship in Ireland as well.
Yeah. Why do you think that just you, of all people, was the founder of a real iconic brand, and then you have a really huge part in two really big brands as well in the coffee industry?
Yeah, I mean, you may see from the stuff around my office, I'm a bit of a Pokemon fan. Yeah. I really enjoy, and the tagline of Pokemon is "Got to catch them all." Well, that's how I felt about coffee roasteries, was, you know, you've got to catch them all and kind of bring them together. But I think every brand that I've been involved with is completely different. There's no relationship, even though they're specialty coffee, and this is the beauty of specialty coffee. People say, oh, there's specialty and commodity. There's so many different variations within specialty of what you're trying to do, you know. Are you blend driven? Are you single origin driven? Are you a small collection of coffees? Are you 50 different coffees. There's lots of different ways to do it. And if you're tied under one brand, you can't experiment with those things. You can't push them because it would damage the brand for what it's known for. So I felt it was a really great opportunity. I mean, 3FE kind of happened. Me and Colin were friends. I was supplying him. And it was a logical step to come together. When he offered me the shareholding in the company, I didn't want it because I was like, this is, now we're 6 coffee shops and a huge roastery and a very successful business. So I'm glad I did take it. Drop was a completely different opportunity. So I met Joanna at a conference and we got chatting, and she was saying about what was happening at Drop, and she was like, would you come and look at the business and see if there's anything we can do better? Has been at this point, was very successful. 3FE was really growing, and she just wanted some consulting advice. So I came in with her and Eric, the previous partner in the business, and I looked at it and I was like, it's great business, I love it, but you're not making money. And businesses that don't make money don't have very long to not make money. So you need to address things. And I came up with some suggestions and some ideas. And the day I was leaving to go back to the UK, Eric called me into the cafe and said, can we have a chat? Of course. So we sat and had a coffee, and him and his family were moving back to Norway. His wife is from Norway. I think he's from Sweden. And he was looking for an opportunity to get out and asked me if I'd be interested. And I was like, well, I've just spent 3 days looking at your books and probably not. But there was something about Sweden, there was something about Stockholm that I really liked, and there was something about Drop that really excited me. You look at it as a brand and it's very iconic. Nobody else looks like Drop. It's got that very unique feel to it, and we ended up negotiating and came to a very reasonable offer to take over his shareholding. He was the majority shareholder at the time. But then the first thing I did when I came in was we split that shareholding 50-50, so I actually gave some of my shareholding to Joanna and was just like, look, if we're partners in this, let's not have one person with more power over the other person. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, and now you and Johanna is a power couple in coffee.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, you are.
You should have saw us this morning at breakfast. You wouldn't have called us a power couple then. But yeah, I mean, that came later. So we were actually business partners for a good few months before we became partners in life. That was, I think, something we both fought against a little bit because, I think working with family and working with people who you live with can be very stressful, and it was already a stressful enough time coming into Drop. There were lots of things to do. We moved roastery, and there's a lot of investment to be done, a lot of cleaning up to be done. And then this was the thing in Drop. There were a lot of people came and went. There were founders who came and left quite quickly, and then there were founders that were there a little longer, and there were just things to clean up. And the last thing we needed was a personal life getting in the way, but hey, I'm irresistible, and we could only hold off so long. No, and we ended up becoming a couple a few months later.
You have a lot of experience from all over the coffee industry, from a lot of different places in the world. How do you say that the Swedish coffee scene compares with the international coffee scene?
I will temper first. The experience is just a cover word for old. You've been around a long time, and definitely I have been around a long time, and I have seen a lot of different things. And I think the UK coffee scene, it was very underdeveloped. So the quality of commodity coffee in the UK is awful. The story that I told you about the instant coffee, when I started, has been 90% of the coffee sold was instant. So that's a baseline you're already fighting against, and then the demand for quality is much lower than the demand for low prices. And I think in the Swedish market, what I've always found is the commodity coffee, the entry level coffee, is 1,000,000 times better than the entry-level coffee in the UK. So it makes the job of specialty much harder to stand out and say, look, we're better. You know, we've got, this is what we are compared to what the supermarkets are selling. You know, I can go to a 7-Eleven and the coffee will be just about drinkable. It will be changed regularly, so it won't be sitting there for hours. You know, the big problem in the UK is coffee can sit there for a long time and people don't care about its freshness. And so I think there's a general understanding about what coffee is in the Nordic countries, and an appreciation of it. But with that comes its own challenges. You know, definitely for specialty, it's much harder to say, we're lots better. You know, particularly when some of the big brands are saying the same things. So, you know, some of the larger, and I call them kind of specialty commodity. And I think you know who I'm talking about with those that are saying, you know, about producers and about sustainability. It's very hard to differentiate between them and what I call true specialty. And there are a number of really good specialty coffee roasteries in Sweden. Lots and lots. But it's very difficult when you're talking on the same platform as some of the ones that are not necessarily doing the same level. It's the commodity specialty guys.
Yeah, because all of the big guys in the commodity industry are also having a premium coffee and some specialty coffee as well. Yeah, no, definitely, but you can't have both. You know, I don't believe you can be both, because what you're basically saying is this is the good stuff and this is the crap stuff for everybody else. And what we talked about brands earlier, it can be very confusing for a brand that says, oh, this is our premium stuff. And it's like, okay, well, your other stuff's not very good then. Is that what you're saying? No, this is just our premium stuff. Well, I prefer to be on the back of like, all of our stuff's premium stuff. You were into it before, because, but you started a podcast with Colin called Temper Tantrum, and the video series In My Mug. Please tell us more about it.
Yeah, it's Temper Tantrum. So the reason we started Temper Tantrum was we came back from the Atlanta World Barista Championships, and that was the first time Colin had competed. And I'd only known Colin for about a month at that point, and we went to Atlanta. Did he finish 6th or 4th? I can't remember. He was finished in the top 6. Did really well in his first time ever competing at a Barista Championships. And we decided we were going to do London 2010, which was the next WBC. But we needed an excuse to get together. So the problem was we didn't want to go a year where we didn't talk about coffee, we didn't talk about the routine. So we came up with this idea of doing a podcast, which meant that he had to come to me once a month, or I had to come to him once a month, and we would sit down and record a podcast series. And it was really a couple of mates sitting together in a room chatting about coffee. You know, we hadn't got an outlet. The internet wasn't quite as formed. I don't think the community was quite as formed as it is now. And we needed to create something to give us what we needed. And that was Temper Tantrum. And started off as just a podcast, a couple of guys talking. And then one drunken podcast, we said we should do an event. And we got 6 speakers to come and talk. Gwilym Davies, the UK Barista Champion of 2009, he came in a dress. James Hoffman came and looked cool. Who else did we have speak? There were some really good speakers. And we ended up with 100 people in a room who paid for a ticket. And on the back of that, we went to Korea. We did one in China. We did one in San Francisco. We basically took the thing all over the world and had great fun with it. Made no money from it whatsoever. In fact, it cost me quite a bit, but actually learnt a lot and networked a lot and had bags full of fun. So it was definitely worthwhile. I mean, I still own the domain Temper Tantrum. We're still sitting on the thing, and we never said we'd retired. We just put it in hibernation for a little while, and maybe one day there'll be an event where it's the right event to bring it out and to do something again. In My Mug was really just created from something that I wanted. So I watched a YouTuber called Gary Vaynerchuk, who used to do Wine Library TV. And that was exactly the format I wanted. I love wine as well as coffee, and coffee for the morning, wine for the night. But I loved what he was doing there, was making wine accessible. You know, I've been in so many wine stores where people are snobby about it, and they they've just got preconceptions, and this was a guy that was just saying, look, this wine's really fun. Like, it tasted this and it's great. And so that's what I started to do within my mug, and millions of views. It was crazy. Like, in the height of it, it was just, we were getting so many contacts from it and so much energy from it. Unfortunately, that's one brand that I didn't hang on to, because that's part of Has Been now, and I don't know what they're doing with it. I don't really watch anymore or look, but some great times on In My Mug. You know, I did it on coffee farms, I did it in trains, planes, automobiles. You know, I did it from hospital once. I never missed a week. So from 2008 right up until I left Has Been, I never missed a week. And they were always recorded that week as well. It wasn't like we went and did 20 of them and they were in the can. I wanted them to be relevant to the time. So, and for a long time, a lot of the editing and production was done by me, which very much showed.
Yeah, but both Tentum Tentum and In My Mug has been a really huge help for the community to start talking coffee in a different way.
I think so, and I think for completely different audiences. Like, In My Mug was never meant for the professional. You know, it was meant for the consumer. Yeah. It was an entry level, or I could be interested. Whereas Tentum Tantrum was very much not aimed at the consumer. You know, it was very much, this is for the coffee professional. This is a space. And I look what James Hoffman's done with his YouTube channel, and I think he's very much taken on to the next level by a long way, that consumer one. You know, James will be the first to admit that that's not aimed at the industry. You know, we might find something interesting in it, and we might kind of get, but you know, I think educating the consumer is far more important than educating the you know, the community of, you know, professionals. And if you can reach 100,000 consumers, or you can reach 1,000, you know, professionals, I know which one I'd rather do, because they're the ones who are going to drink coffee. Like, I remember saying to Dale when he was like, oh, you know, we should do like an In My Mug for the industry, and I was like, they're the worst. They never buy coffee. Like, you know, they don't buy coffee. They either want coffee for free, or they've got their own roastery and they're roasting their own coffee. Like, that's no good for brand. I want the consumer. I want Mrs. Smith at home to watch and be a little bit excited that a coffee might taste of chocolate. You know, that's my target, not a barista in, you know, Stockholm that might want to, you know, try the coffee but not want to pay for it.
Yeah, let's talk about something more serious. We are talking a lot in the industry about sustainability. Yeah, but at the same time we are traveling a lot, sourcing coffee all over the world with airplanes and stuff like that. What's your thoughts about those things?
Yeah, no, so I about a month ago I was invited to speak at Probat at their symposium, and the title of my presentation, but they basically said, talk about whatever you want. And I haven't spoken to anybody for, like, in person for like 3 years because of COVID, so I was like, oh, what do I do? And my title was Sustainability and the Irony of the Green Buyer, how we need, no must, do better. And the whole preface of the talk was about how we focus very much on, like, sustainable packaging, and we focus on, you know, paying a good price, but we seem to ignore the jumping on aeroplanes and flying around the world. And I find it mind-blowing. It doesn't matter how many packets of coffee bags you recycle, you'll never offset what you've spent on getting that aeroplane and going to a coffee conference. And you know, I sat in a coffee conference with 100 people in Germany that had all got on aeroplanes to go there as well. And it's like, we're sitting here talking about sustainability, yet we're not doing it, and we need to stop talking about it, and we need to start acting. And I think COVID has been a really good opportunity for us to stop and take stock and look. So in 2019, I did 127 flights in a year. 127 takeoff and landings, traveling the world, Central America, Africa, you know, down to New Zealand, like everywhere. And it was just like, this is just not sustainable. Like, this is not sustainable for me personally, but it's not sustainable, more importantly, for the planet. Now, visiting coffee farms is very important still. Like, meeting the people you're working with is super important. I can't wait to get back on an aeroplane and go back to origin. Like, that's all I've done for the last 15 years. In the last 3 years, all I've done is sit at home and talk to people on Skype, and it's not the same. But what it has taught me is that I needed to reassess what I was doing. I will never do 127 flights in a year again. Never. I will never do more than 20 flights in a year. Like, never. But when I do go, it needs to be quality focused, have an objective, and not just because every year I go. I don't need to go to El Salvador. Well, I do need to go to El Salvador every year because I love it. It's one of my favourite places in the world. But I don't need to go every year. So maybe I go every second year, and maybe I go for longer, so I do all of Central America in that time, and maybe a bit of road trip, and not necessarily so many aeroplanes because I'm not in such a rush. And then that's more quality. But we definitely have to address, it's the biggest one. Like, we can talk about, making our roasteries more efficient and more CO2 friendly, and we can talk about packaging. But the biggest one is the travel. It's by far the biggest one. And coffee will never be sustainable. Like, let's be completely honest here, that coffee will never be sustainable because it's a product that's not grown locally, can't be grown locally, always has food miles on it, and then has to go through this fairly aggressive cooking process. But we can try and make it a little bit more. We can do things, we need to do things, and we need to appreciate the value of it. Coffee is too cheap. Coffee should be more expensive. Coffee is a luxury. Coffee is not something we should demand for free when we go for a meal somewhere, or it has a value, it's an intrinsic value, and we have to treat it much more respectfully than we currently do.
Yeah, and when we are into the producer, I know that you in Drop Coffee are really big on telling the story about the producer and the way the coffee comes to you at Drop. Why do you think that's so important, and what can it do for the whole industry?
I think the story of the coffee producer is so much more interesting than the story of the barista or the roaster or anything, because it's a life story. It's not I wanted to be a barista and I worked behind the bar and then I entered a competition. This is like generation upon generation. There's real depth to it. But I think there's a hunger from the consumer, or a selection of consumers that want to know the provenance of where their things they're consuming come from. So, I love to go to a butcher's when the meat is from 5 miles or 10 kilometres down the road, Like, I love that history and knowing a little bit more that what I'm eating has got some story behind it. I think also me and Joanna we're coffee farmer groupies, we just love hanging with them. It's like, it's just such an interesting life choice to own a coffee farm, and just because your family have owned it, and a lot of people go away and do other jobs and then are drawn back to the farm because of the excitement of specialty coffee. So there's a collection of reasons why we tell the stories, but I think the main one is we want to. Like, that's what excites us, is sharing the history of a farm and of a coffee, and that it's not just something you get free at the end of a meal or whatever. It should be something that is valued and there's a story behind.
Yeah. Let's talk about the people that are new in coffee. What are your best advice for somebody who wants to get into coffee?
Well, I think if you want to come into coffee for money, it's not a good choice. There's a lot of better choices out there that you can make a lot more money at. A friend of mine tells us, how do you make a small fortune in a coffee shop? Yeah. Start with a large one, because it's a really good way to. But I think if you get involved, get involved for the right reasons. Like, what do you want? What do you want from it? Have a target and a goal. Do you want to be a barista? Do you want to be a coffee shop owner? Do you want to be a roastery, a roaster, or own a roastery? And have a path, because that was what I very much had at the very beginning of Has Been, was like, tried the market thing, didn't work, tried the cafe thing, didn't work, and then sat down and went, right, I need a path. I need this to go somewhere, and focused solely on online. Didn't really have any wholesale, didn't really have any intention of having retail. Was just like, I'm just gonna focus on online sales, and that's when my success came. When I was looking around thinking, oh, I can do this, I can do that. It didn't work. So it's having that clear focus and having like, I'm going to be the best at that. And it might only be a niche. And online in 2003 was a niche, like a big niche. But I was like, if I'm really good at that, then I can own that part of the market, and that can be what I'm known for being good at.
Ross told me sent me this question about China, and what do you think about China as a coffee producing country?
I think anybody who knows me knows I love diversity. Like, I love diversity and variety, and having different origins producing coffee that have always produced coffee but never had the skills or the knowledge to produce specialty, I think is really exciting. I've been doing some work in Thailand for about 5-6 years, you know, of somewhere that has got so much potential. The potential is there because they also have a coffee community, a specialty coffee community that are serving coffee. So that link with the barista and the consumer is and the grower is much closer. So I think it's really exciting. The first ever coffee that I bought, a pallet of coffee. The first pallet of coffee that has been ever bought had a China Beaujolais on. That was 2003. So I'm open to it. If it tastes good, I'm open to it. A lot of what I've tasted, unfortunately, has got that little idea of going, anaerobic, or, you know, yeast fermentation, and as good as those can be, if they're done badly, they're even worse than not doing anything at all. So I've tasted a lot of not so good coffee from some of the new origins, but it's exciting, and they will learn and they will get better and they will find their marketplace, and I'm really excited to be able to see new coffees coming on, because with climate change and with the way the world is changing, not just climate wise but, like, you know, financially wise, people getting richer, we are going to see less coffee production in some places. So if some other places can fill that, then that's fantastic. Like, India's one that's always interested me as a unusual origin. You know, India produces 4 million bags a year, so it's a lot of coffee. It's like 6th or 7th biggest coffee producer in the world, but exports nothing, but consumes nothing. But because there's so many people there, they only need to consume 40 grams a year each to take all of that supply away. So I think more origins the better. Yeah.
And then I think it's going to be more sustainable as well.
Yeah, no, definitely, and but then it also allows, like, when you see new wine producing regions kind of come on. When we were in Bolivia last time, we were tasting some Bolivian wines. Have you ever tasted a Bolivian wine?
No.
You're lucky. But there's one or two that are doing a good job, you know, and the guys that aren't doing such a good job are learning from these other guys, and it, like, that will happen. It pushes the industry further. So I'm all for it.
Philip are asking you, which football team do you dislike the most?
Newcastle.
And then I have a question from Ida. She's wondering which paper filter you prefer to the V60.
Now I'm going to say something fairly controversial here. I make a lot of different filters from Chemex filters. I love Chemex filters because they're so thick. It gives you a very different cut profile. I've got a little press. It's not here in Sweden, unfortunately. It's back at my home in England, but it's a press that makes AeroPress ones, and for the AeroPress I use Chemex as well because I've got these little cutters. So I really like the Chemex filter. I think it gives you a super clean cup, and I love super clean. You know, it gives you that kind of clarity and sharpness. Yeah. Probably the closest to the cupping table of any of the filters.
Yeah, I really like the Chemex too. Yeah. And you know, the elegance in the cup.
Yeah. And as the self-proclaimed king of Chemex as well, I feel I'm an authority to say it as well. I'm the only person that's competed in the UK Brewers Cup Championship with Chemex and made finals. So I am the king of Chemex.
Yeah. Let's crown you.
I actually did. There are some photos out there with me with a Chemex with a plastic crown. So yeah, I took it very seriously. I actually had it with my preparation for the finals for the Brewers Cup, where I came second. Not that I'm bitter. Maybe I should try and compete in the Swedish one. I don't know how long I have to be here to be in the Swedish Championships, but maybe I should bring the Chemex to the Swedish Brewers Cup.
I think when you have a work permit, you can do it.
Okay, well I've got my residency, so yeah, I'm.
Next year.
Watch out, Swedish Brewers Cup. The Chemex is coming.
How do you think that we can make the Swedish specialty coffee scene much bigger than it is today?
And it's one thing that really frustrates me because we have so many great roasteries here, so many, and not just like the thing is in the UK is everything's located in London. Like Has Been was an anomaly. Like that was not normal for it not to be in London. But in Sweden we've got great roasteries all over the country. Like it's not Stockholm focused, which is phenomenal. And if I knew that, we'd be printing money, you know, like let it rain. But I think we're doing the right things. I think Patrick's running WBC is always helpful. Like the one thing that sparked the World Barista Champion, the UK scene was James Hoffman winning the 2007, and then Stephen Morrissey winning the 2008, and then Gwilym winning the 2009. Like it really had that push, and I think if you can have consistent finishes, and we've had this as well for Sweden in the past. You know, Stephen is it Stephen? No, who's it? What's his name? Oh, Matt. Matt when he competed. Yeah. Sorry, Matt. I love you, Matt. I'm just terrible with names. You know, I think if we can have that consistently, that really helps the industry galvanise. I think there's some key people within the Swedish community as well that can really do that. I look at people like Per. I look at people like, he's going to hate me because we just spent a week together in Italy as well. Hacco. Yeah. You know, there's some really good people who can be. I hate the word role model because you're not a role model in an industry, but they can gain people's interests. People like yourself, you know, putting content out there. This is what builds. That's what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009 in the UK. So we have good roastery, we have good people, we have good coffee. We've got all of the things in place. It's just giving it time and letting it happen, and hopefully getting some success.
I think one of the most important things that we are going to need some more coffee shops, because today we have a bit over 100 roasteries in Sweden, but we don't have any coffee shops.
Yeah. I think what we really need as well is a little bit more collaboration and cooperation. I find like when I look at the UK scene, I look at the people people who were my competitors were my friends. Like we worked together. So if something was going. You know, if a customer was saying something, we'd talk to each other. We'd support each other and help each other. And I find that Sweden's a little bit more closed. Maybe that's a social thing, or maybe it's just because at the time when the UK thing was happening, we were all of a similar age, and passionate, and there wasn't a market there, so there wasn't anything to be threatened by. I love the saying that a rising tide carries all boats. You know, as things get better, everybody gets better. And I think a bit more collaboration and cooperation would be amazing. I'm happy to share with other roasteries any of our information, any of our contact. We actually moved some coffee for a fellow Swedish roastery a couple of years ago in our container, because it was like, it's the right thing to do. It's helping, you know. And if that means they're going to have better coffee, then we're all for that. And I'd love to see more of that, more working together.
Yeah. I've been talking a lot with some women in the coffee industry and talk about how we can make more women come further in the Swedish industry. Yeah. Because we have a lack of women. Joanna, of course, and then we have Anne, and we have a couple of more, but it's hard for the women in the coffee industry. How do you think that we as men can make them feel more comfortable and take a bigger part in the industry?
Yeah, no, it's obviously a hot topic in our house. But I think actually Sweden does a good job compared to most places, because I think the two people you've mentioned there are two of the biggest names in the Swedish coffee industry. And that's amazing, because when you look at other industries, you know, you look at Denmark, for instance, name me a Danish, business person in coffee that's a woman. It's really hard. You know, Norway. Talk about Norway. Give me somebody. You know, you've got some, but they're not they're not at the top of their game. Whereas in Sweden, we've got 2 people that really are at the top of their game, you know. So I think we do a good job. We can always do better, of course. We must do better. But I think it's about judging by. It's not what we do. It's allowing them to do what they want to do and be supportive of it. You know, my role at Drop is very much in the background. We joked about it earlier, but my job title at Drop is head of paperclips. You know, I'm director of paperclips, and I'm not even allowed to choose the paperclips. It's just like that. You know, that Joanna still does that. But it's empowering Joanna to do the job that she does. That's my job at Drop. Yep. Is she sets our strategic goals and direction, and it's my job to help her deliver them. Like that, I'm there to support her decisions. And you know, you can only do what you're doing. I can't go out and help somebody that isn't, unless they want to come to me and give, like I'm happy to mansplain and give some advice. But it's about not doing that. It's about trying to be. I don't see a woman in coffee any different to a man in coffee, and I think that's how we all have to be.
Yeah. You at Drop were quite early putting the FOB prices on your bags. Why is that so important for you?
It's not important for me. It's important for Joanna.
Yeah.
And again, that's another part of where she set the direction, and I'm supporting it. I don't like it because I think it can. An FOB. So if I pay $2 a pound for a Brazil and I pay $3.50 for a Kenyan, which one's better?
Yeah.
You know, the Brazilian's making bucket loads of money and the Kenyan's losing money. You know, so it's a blunt tool to get across a very difficult message, but it's the start. So we try and add context to it with our sustainability report. So we do a yearly sustainability report where we look at the origins and we try and give context to that pricing. So we've got some prices that I'm not so proud of, you know. But when you say you're going to show everything, you show everything.
Yep.
And then that pushes us to kind of think, okay, well, can we pay a little bit more there? Because I don't feel comfortable with this. And it's hard. It's more of a tool to push us than it is a tool to inform the consumer, because the consumer just doesn't understand it. And I don't understand it. A neighbouring farm in El Salvador can have massively different production costs, but if you pay the same FOB, that's okay. So yeah, it's a difficult one. It really is a difficult one, but it's a start, and this is the start of a journey for us that we hope in 5 years' time that we'll have enough data, because we've been putting that into there, that we can actually show that we're getting better.
Yeah.
And that's all we want to do, is try and I don't think we're good at sustainability. I don't think we're good at looking after our producers enough. Are we better than the majority? I hope so. Do I want to get better at it? God, yeah. You know, like that's my main goal, is to, and FOB pricing and a sustainability report is the start of collecting enough data to show that you are getting better.
I think it's really important to be transparent about the stuff that we do,
yeah.
and the price that we pay is.
I agree, and I think I've always, if anybody's ever emailed me or asked me what I'm paying for a coffee, I've always been open to it. I think the danger with just giving out information without context can be actually more damaging. You know, people could go in the coffee shop, they can go to Drop today in Marietoret and look at the box and go, I'm going to buy this one because it's $4 a pound.
Yeah.
But not realising that the $3 a pound is actually probably a much better price for the producer. And so, but transparency has always been number one for me. I'm really bad at keeping secrets.
Yeah.
Like, don't tell me any secrets, because I'll run around and tell everybody. But I think we do have to be transparent in what we're doing. And this is the very beginning of us. I don't think in 2 years' time the data will be very valid. I think in 5 years' time the data will really start to show some trends that we're on a trajectory where we're trying to do better.
Yeah. We're talking a bit about in my mug, and it was based on to the community, for the coffee buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your 3 best advices for the home brewer?
Okay. Number 1, set scales. Like, set of scales, it sounds ridiculous to most non-coffee geeks, But if you make good coffee and you go, that's delicious, I really like what I've made there, if you've measured, you can repeat. You know, so number one is a set of scales. Number two is as good a grinder as you can buy. Like, if you've only got 30,000 crowns and you want to buy an espresso machine, don't. You know, like buy a really good grinder, spend half of that money on a really good grinder, and then start saving for the espresso machine in the future. So a good grinder. And then the third one is that it sounds really simple, but it's the most obvious one, is just buy good coffee.
Yeah.
Like, buy coffee from people who you trust and you know, you think you know, and you can, and again, are transparent and open, and, you know, like, yeah. So scales, good grinder, good coffee.
Perfect. When it comes to coffee, who inspires you?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, it sounds corny, but like, yeah, Joanna is definitely the inspiration to me. Like, I love her honesty and her vulnerability. You know, there's very little hidden there, but that's an easy cop out, and I'm not going to use Joanna, but she's definitely in that list. I love working with Colin. Colin Harmon has been I mean, I've been his mentor, but he's taught me a lot, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, totally.
You know, I'm meant to be there to help him, and he uses me as a bouncing board for a lot of things. But like, Colin's been really good, and I'm a Hoffman fan. I like James Hoffman is just like a phenomenal guy. Really love spending like an hour with James Hoffman is just an hour well spent. I'm going to chuck one more in there if I can. I know this is not like cheap, but I love Klaus Thompson as well. Like what Klaus has done with Coffee Collective is really impressive. You know, with a team of people with him, he'll be the first to admit that he hasn't done it all, but I think he's very much the forward face of it, and I'm very impressed by them.
If you have to choose one coffee to drink every day for the rest of your life, what coffee would that be?
Oh, I'm going to say something so controversial here, because it would be a Brazil Pulp Natural Bourbon. Like, because it's the most coffee-like coffee. When Brazils are done really well, they can be such a crowd pleaser. You know, I don't want to geisha every day for breakfast. Like, I don't want to be drinking Javas all the time. I don't want anaerobics, and I just want a coffee. I want something that's clean, sweet, some acidity, but not too much. And if I've got to drink it every day, I think I would go for a Brazil Pulp Natural Bourbon.
Well, in 2022, we had a lot of anaerobic coffees. What are your predictions for 2023?
Hopefully less anaerobic coffees, because some of I've tasted more bad anaerobics than I have good. Because it's something that's so technical to do, you have to be good at it. And we're guinea pigs at the minute with it, so I would like to see just a little bit more clarity. I would like us to stop messing with processing and start looking at picking. So for me, the biggest impact you can have on a cup of coffee is picking it correctly. So if you pick it correctly, you've got a foundation to build on to go on and do it. So I'd like to see more of a focus on picking. I'd like to see more of a focus on varietals. I think varietals are the one thing that we have in specialty coffee that people can relate to. You know, if I go to the system and pick up a Pinot Noir and I pick up a Zinfandel, I know exactly what I'm going to get. You know, Pinot Noir is going to be light, it's going to be fruity, it's going to be, you know, my Zinfandel is going to be big and bold. And we never really explain that as well with varietals in coffee, purely because we don't have the same kind of differentiation. You know, a Bourbon can taste lots of different ways because of the picking, because of the processing. You know, you can make a Pinot Noir taste like a Zinfandel if you want to, but you don't want to because you've got the differentiations. So I'd like to see us focus on the fundamentals. You know, the picking, not adding flavours with processing, like letting the processing be what it is, so we can actually see the coffee naked, if you like. But that's always our challenge at Drop, is we want. I love being at the coffee table. Me and Joanna at the coffee table, cupping table is our favourite place. Like, that's where we bounce off each other and we're throwing things backwards and forwards. But we taste the coffee naked. We're not doing anything apart, and we want that in our cups. We want people at home to have the same joyous experience that a great washed bourbon can have from El Salvador on the cupping table as they do in their cup of coffee at home.
Okay. Please explain for the viewer the impact of picking.
So it's really simple if you think about it in like, you know, an apple.
Yeah.
If an apple's on a tree and it's ripe and it's juicy and it's just at the right point, if you pick it at that point, it's going to be tasty, it's going to be the best, you know. Whereas if you pick it when it's like not quite ripe and it's a little under and it's not quite as good, now you don't have the benefit of then transporting it and it may be maturing over the transport because you're picking it and processing it. So you want to pick the apple at the juiciest and the most red. It's as simple as that, you know. It's also when you're picking, you can damage the tree, so that affects yield for the next year. You know, it's just about taking care, extra attention.
Life have turned around the last 7 years.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
Yeah.
What's in the future for?
Do you know, like, I think life priorities do change as you go on, and you know, we recently had a baby, a year ago, which has definitely given me a different perspective. You know, work-life balance has never become more important. But then saying that, I'm still not done. You know, I've still got lots of things I want to do. My work at 3FE is giving me a really great opportunity. It's where I don't have to worry about business. I don't have to worry about profit. I don't have to worry about marketing, strategy. All I have to worry about is doing a good job. Like getting great coffee to the roastery and then they do the rest of it. So that's amazing because it's allowing me to have that work-life balance but still have a massive impact at origin. And the volumes that we buy in there are fantastic. A drop has been equally as life-changing because with Joanna being on parental leave, I've had to step in a little bit. So I'm doing much more on QC, I'm doing much more, and I've always been involved in the green buying with Joanna. Like, you know, just because of my experience and my contacts, it's allowed us to have a real development of our range. So I'm really enjoying those things. I'm enjoying doing things outside of coffee. I have other hobbies now, I have other interests, which are not about making money or work, but like having enjoyment, enjoying life as well as working. So I'm in a really lucky place. I've got a great job, I've got 2 great businesses I'm involved in, with 2 great people who use me for my experience and what I'm doing and knowledge, but like I can still do other things. I went to preschool yesterday afternoon with the little one for the first time, because Colin doesn't care if I'm sat at my desk or not as long as my job's done. So during the working day I went to preschool, came back, did my work, and so I'm really lucky, and just enjoying life a little more. Enjoying Sweden.
That sounds good. How can people get in touch with you?
I am Mr. Stephen Leighton on Instagram. I don't really post, but I do read. I look at other people's and they can contact him there. They can contact me, Stephen@dropcoffee.se, if they want to get in touch that way. Much better at email than anything else. Even though I said I wanted to get better at replying, I have harsh standards on myself. Come to the cafe, come to the roastery, reach out, let me know, and we'll grab a coffee, grab a fika together.
You're getting too much Swede.
I am.
Oh, it's been great chatting to you, Stephen. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the chance to speak to the Swedish community, because I think a lot of people have preconceptions of the old me, loud, brash, kind of out there, and that's really never was me, and never is me, but I'm definitely mellowing with age.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.